God is truth. And we've been looking at various different characteristics of God, what those characteristics are and how they impact us, what the challenges are to us as his followers. And today, God is truth, I think, is one of the most challenging ones, because people are saying, and I believe they're right, we're living in a post-truth world. So what does it mean for God to be truth in a post-truth world? There we go again. This is the thing about doing it live. If I was being pre-recorded, I would have edited that. So that's proof that I'm here now, stumbling over my words. So what does the Bible say about God is truth? Well, it's a major theme of John's Gospel. And in fact, a word search in the New Testament says that 42 of the 102 occurrences of the word truth appear in John's Gospel. And John's Gospel is hugely different than the other three Gospels. It's more difficult to preach about, which is why, if you realise it or not, you have less sermons on John's Gospel than any of the others. The other Gospels are made up of different incidents and discrete teaching sections which are linked together and are easy to preach upon. The other Gospels do have common themes, but they're secondary to those different incidents. Whereas John is all about different themes, which weave in and out to produce his gospel. And you have this intense tapestry which creates this colourful pageant of truth. And truth is one of the major themes in John's gospel. And it starts off with the Father, full of grace and truth. The Son coming from the Father. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. But also, well known, I am the way, the truth and the life, says Jesus, is both the messenger and message of truth. And then the Trinitarian aspect of it all, the Spirit again and again introduced as the Spirit of truth. Sent from the Father who is true, continuing the ministry of Jesus who is truth. And the Spirit then leads followers into truth. And we as followers are meant to, it's not clicking everyone. There we go, you're going to have to click for me. My clicker is not working. Have I got my clicker on? No, I've got my clicker on. I'm an expert on this. Once upon a time, I used to do this week in, week out. But never mind, these things happen. We are meant to be worshippers who worship in spirit and truth. Everyone is on the side of truth, listens to me, says Jesus. And John himself, the writer of the gospel, the man who saw it has given testimony, and his testimony is true. He knows that he tells the truth. He testifies that we also may believe in the truth. So you have, on the one hand, God, Father, Son, and Spirit as truth. You then have us as worshippers and John as truth. But then, on the other hand, you have the devil, Satan. And Satan is introduced as not holding to the truth. There is no truth in him. He is a liar, the father of lies, in contrast to God. And then, well-known Pilate. And at a key moment between Jesus and Pilate, Jesus again talks about he came to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me. And Pilate retorts, what is truth? God, Father, Son, and Spirit are all about truth. The gospel itself is truth. We are meant to be people of truth. But Satan, the devil, the accuser, the deceiver, is the opposite to truth. He is the father of lies. And then the world, represented by Pilate, wanting to cloud the issue, question the very nature of truth. What is truth, says the world dismissively. Clearly, truth is a battleground between, on the one hand, God and his followers, and on the other hand, Satan and the world. It's clearly important, but it's not surprising, therefore, that truth is challenging. And so what are the implications for us? Clearly, the gospel is claimed to be based on truth. It's either true or not. It's not simply a good story. It's not a philosophy that is helpful. It's not just wise words. It's either historical truth or it's a lie. My journey to faith was based on that. I could believe beforehand, it's a way, the story of putting across moral truths, but it can't be true. But I realised it's either true or not. And I came to the conclusion that the gospel is true. These things happen. Jesus did historically rise from the dead. Therefore, you've got to take everything else seriously. So the gospel claims to be true. But also there are spiritual forces against truth. The devil is a liar, and spiritual warfare is fought on the basis of truth. And then there are political forces, worldly forces, continually trying to distort truth. What is truth? And explains why truth is in such short supply today. Why we're surrounded by spin, marketing, distortions everywhere. We shouldn't be surprised. But we must be, as followers of Jesus, fully on the side of truth. God is truth. Therefore, you and I, need to be people of truth. And we should be on the side of truth, firstly in the world, then in the church, and then in our individual lives. So let's start with the world. The story we tell ourselves as nations. And this is an interesting slide, a quote that I picked up about America. The United States is similar to the respectable-looking family down the street that harbours incest and alcoholism behind closed doors. The family's public face is hardworking and morally upright, so that the story told is not the story lived. The storyline has been edited and rewritten to hide the sin that cries out to be named and forgiven. Powerful words. And what is the sin that cries out to be named and forgiven? According to this writer, America is built on genocide of Native Americans and the slavery of African Americans. Americans, according to this author, are lying to themselves about their past. Much of the conflict and tensions are caused by this false story being told. Here's much more to say. I find this insight powerful. But it's not just America. It's an issue for us. As a wise person once said, it's easier to see the speck in someone else's eyes than the log in our own. British history matters. I saw this picture on a Facebook post of a friend of mine. From the other posts that they put up, I suspect their understanding of British history is different to mine. And I know it's currently a political hot potato, which is why I started with America. It's easier to see issues in America than in our own country. We too became a powerful nation on the back of our empire. Not just slavery, but India, the jewel in the crown, as we exploited them and took their natural resources to make us richer. We need to acknowledge as a country our debt, acknowledge the atrocities that we are culpable for, Not just see ourselves as perfect and somehow as the heroes of history and everyone else as villains. So what should people of truth do? They should actively examine the assumptions of history. Is this understanding of history true? Are the stories that are told and we tell ourselves about our history true or not? We need to look at evidence, our sources of truth. And if we're engaged in social media, but even in talking to people, let's not share or retweet too quickly. Let's ensure that what we're saying really is true. Another battleground for the world is spin. It's a more recent phrase, but for an age-old phenomenon. And these are some quotes that I picked up about spin. Stories have the power to shape character. Spin is a story without soul or suffering. A story which consequently creates hypocrisy. And this is what really drew me to it. Spin is of the devil. Spin attempts to tell a flawless story with sizzle and panache, whereas truth is always more complex and grey. Leaders who rely on power and authority prefer certainty. And spin offers it in order to get people on board with their vision. Let's, as people of truth, not get caught up in spin. Let's not be influenced by spin. Let's stand on truth. So there's spin and truth in the world, but truth is also a battleground in the church. And the church growth movement, which has been dominant over the last number of years, is dangerous insofar as it can bring the ways of the world into the church. An attitude that the end justifies the mean. We must look at the story, not just of what's told about the world, but told about us as the church and the story that we tell others. We need to avoid a consumer gospel, claiming that if you come to Jesus, all your problems will be solved. There's various different forms of the prosperity gospel. Come to Jesus and you'll be rich. But rich, not in the way that the Bible declares richness, but the way the world declares richness. God makes us rich, but it doesn't mean that our bank accounts are going to bulge. We turn church into entertainment, seeking to attract people rather than challenging them. Whereas we are meant to be challenging the world, not accommodating the world. There's another quote I came across. False teaching can look like explicitly denying scriptural truths, but more subtly and therefore more dangerously, it can mean simply never ever mentioning some culturally unpalatable scriptural truths. We need to be people of truth, the whole truth. And Paul warns us against teaching what people want to hear rather than teaching truth. The key is for us as the church, truth. Recognizing the importance of truth, knowing it's a battleground and that we battle against the world, the flesh and the devil for truth. And the lies of the world can slip into the church. The story we tell ourselves about our history, a history of the church, which reality is has dark periods. We need to face up to the bad bits, not just to the glory bits. And the quotes that I introduced earlier for the world about spin can also apply to us as the church. Leaders, and I'm a leader in the church, we do like certainty. And spin offers it. And so therefore we can spin the truth to create certainty. and not tell the truth. Trying to get people on board with a vision by hyping things up. Let's be people of truth in the church. And also, let's be people of truth as individuals. The story that we tell ourselves as individuals. And rightly, there are lots of sermons on this subject. And it's helpful and important to recognize this is the heart of spiritual warfare. Satan will be feeding you lies about yourself. He feeds me continually lies about myself. He is the father of lies. Jesus told us that. And there's that constant battle for identity of knowing who we are. God will say one thing and God is truth. Satan will say something else. We need to be building our lives on the truth. The wise man built his house on the rock of truth. What story do you tell yourself? Are you standing firm on truth? The gospel says that you and I are a sinner. We are not all that we're meant to be. But God also says that you and I are his child. We're accepted by him. He declares that we are accepted. We are cleansed. We are clean. We are pure in him. So when Satan says, when he tells you that you're rubbish, you say, yes, that may be true, but it's not the whole truth. Because I may be rubbish, but I've been adopted as God's son. And he puts his ring on me and he crowns me with glory. And he has a future for me. I am a child of God. I am loved. I am accepted. Satan, I'm not listening to your lies. We need to tell both sides of the story. That is truth. Satan will seek to focus on one. The world will even tell you, why bother? Just do whatever you want to do. How do we do all this? How do we build truth into our lives? Check the story you most repeatedly tell yourself. What's the story that you tell yourself? Does it match with Scripture? Is it true? Find scriptures that counteract the lies that you are most prone to tell yourself so that you can speak truth to yourself in love. And don't trust your feelings. Feelings often lie. The Bible, God speaks truth. And we're going to allow ourselves to be overwhelmed with truth now by a song that speaks truth into our lives, that declares and declare with it, I am a child of God. Let's worship together.